How's everybody doing today? So I apologize in advance that our founder, Brad Pitt, isn't here today. Generally, that's some false expectations when they bring Make It Right into the conference. But I'll try to give that a little justice as we move forward. Today, I'm going to talk about the implementation side of what our organization has become and really talk about process, some structure of how that process works, and the overall implementation strategies, because that's what we're about. Our organization was started around 2 years after Hurricane Katrina, so we are still a very young group. We're about 7 years old, but we were started, frankly, with the discouraging rebuilding occurring in certain areas of New Orleans post-Katrina. And today's conversation is going to share experiences in both post-disaster recovery from natural disasters, but also communities that we've worked in that have suffered economic disasters. And we really prescribe this process of urban acupuncture, very strategic approaches that leveraged regenerative and transformative community revitalization. And frankly, it's a highly collaborative process. It's a highly transparent process, but it's rooted at its sole foundation with community engagement. And so today we're going to talk about New Orleans, Kansas City, and the Fort Peck Indian Reservation, 3 projects that we currently are working in, are building currently, and have led to approximately 225 LEED Platinum projects that we've built in the last 7 years. So let me give you a little introduction to the 9th Ward. This is the transit-oriented development bus stop at the base of the Claiborne Bridge in the 9th Ward. With one of our homes, this is just taken 2 days after Gustav came through New Orleans a few years back. But this is a picture that was taken 2 days after Hurricane Katrina, the lower 9th Ward. So please don't think that Hurricane Katrina was a natural disaster. I start the conversation off with that. But this was a man-made disaster. 1983, the Army Corps of Engineers told the federal government that a certain category storm event would not hold the levees up. We're also in a community that in 1927 was given displacement checks by the city of New Orleans that forcibly blew the levees up and flooded their neighborhood, but before they could deposit those checks, they were canceled. So we're in a community that has had 100+ years of real trust issues developed with the local and the federal government. And now we're also working in a community that is the greenest neighborhood in the country, trying to transform itself and transcend above the disasters that have been placed on it for many years. This gives you a little scale of what that water did. The houses in red, this is a map diagram of the 9th Ward. And the houses in red were never found. They washed off their foundation and floated down the street and were never found. So we are at not only a transit-oriented development, we also are at the ground zero in New Orleans that led, the first levee breach occurred about 100 yards from our first house. And that led to 55 other breaches in the city of New Orleans. So 2 years after the fact, when my current boss, Brad Pitt, was asked to be a design jury member for Global Green, another nonprofit working in the area, as he walked through the 9th Ward, he was just devastated that this was 2 years after the fact, that the highest percentage of home ownership in the city of New Orleans was in the 9th Ward, but it also was the highest percentage of insurance companies filing bankruptcy, and it was the highest percentage of the least likely to rebuild. And he wanted to change the paradigm between sustainability, affordability, and design, because that's where you can make the biggest impact. When we can have someone living in a healthy home that is not an energy burden, that transforms its community and builds wealth for that individual through real estate, that's the ultimate goal. And we feel that our platform can strive towards that in terms of implementation. So we had to kind of take a step back and say, yes, this was a disaster, but this is an opportunity. And in that sense, we walked onto a landscape that had taken a 20-foot wall of water and washed every house away. But we also concentrated the efforts back to this idea of urban acupuncture as very strategic, focused development that is historically not what cities and municipalities have done with federal, state, and city incentives. They have scattered sites. They have distributed allocations of funds, and they have not concentrated them in a manner to leverage change. Change only occurs with collaboration, and this was a very difficult task. It was more than just collaboration and a picture of hands. These are pictures of hands of ninjas that we have brought to the table, of community development, ninjas of financial planning and redevelopment, and ninjas of sustainable design. And then we put it on a table that allows everybody to share crayons. And with our platform, where everyone either wants an autographed picture of Angelina Jolie or have lunch with Brad Pitt, it makes it a very good collaborative setting to invite a lot of these ninjas to the table. But it's rooted in community engagement. And we're the only organization, this was the first thing that we did, we're the only organization in the history of New Orleans to have all 13 neighborhood stakeholders sign a collective letter of invitation and an MOU for collaborative approach at redevelopment. This letter of invitation, this picture that you see, is what has replicated every project that we've worked on. We will not just go into a community. We will not descend onto someone as a developer. We are invited as partners, and we transparently look at this whole process from the start to the finish, from the design to the financing, to the equity gap, to everything about that, and structure these projects in a way that, that deal with concerns of gentrification, that deal with concerns of speculator versus investor, this tension in communities. But the reality is gentrification is good when it's about wealth building. Gentrification is bad when it's about displacement. And if you have the proper policies in place, the planning frameworks in place, you can build wealth, you can not displace, and you can encourage investment simultaneously, but you have to have the full team in support of that direction. So Brad's thought was, let's ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And he did a public-private art endeavor to start this project. This pink project scattered series of houses, of monopoly-formed houses across the landscape like Katrina. And this is what allowed us to raise $12 million in 6 weeks to build the think tank and the organization of Make It Right. We partnered with Bill Clinton and the Clinton Global Initiative to build 150 LEED Platinum houses in the 9th Ward. We're currently hovering around the 120 range in a 4-block area. And according to the USGBC, it's the highest concentration of LEED Platinum houses in the country. We also then brought in a world-renowned group of architects. I myself am a landscape architect and urban planner, so they very quickly had architecture covered. But when they asked me to come on board, it was also about community planning, about community engagement, and about the larger sustainable infrastructure framework that would resolve in this community long term. And from that, we got amazing designs. They were abstracted designs from historical architectural vernacular, but the reality is the lower 9th Ward was slab-on-grade ranch houses built in the 40s with very little architectural fabric. So we wanted to redefine contemporary aesthetic and contemporary design in New Orleans, but using that historical vernacular as inspiration. And before we knew it, these homes, these renderings, these birds and butterfly watercolor pictures started to very quickly become houses. And that's very important because the sustainable metric in the 9th Ward was this was the alternative. And this is not sustainable. This is not built with healthy water cycles. This is not built with high-performance building envelopes, nor renewable energy, nor most of our projects have been in food deserts, so it doesn't address any kind of healthy food mechanisms. Every one of those are a part of the processes of design and community redevelopment. And every one we build is LEED Platinum. So we're currently building LEED Platinum houses for about $125 to $130 a square foot in terms of construction costs. We're building LEED Platinum below low-income housing tax credit allocation square footage cost and below HUD's affordable housing square footage cost because we figured out a way to evolve that process to analyze each point in LEED and figure out how to do this affordably. But to see what happens in New Orleans, it's about innovation. But the philanthropic community quit giving to Hurricane Katrina folks a long time ago. So how do we then transition that to replication? How do we take this, build out perpetuity in New Orleans, but take that and replicate it across the country because they have needs as well. It's just not a natural disaster, it's an economic one. So the first house landed, it looked like a spaceship coming out of the sky. But the reality is this house is built to deal with the climatic and the ecological conditions of that sense of place. It's elevated due to flooding. It can withstand 160-mile-an-hour winds. It has off-the-grid technology with solar. You can see clear story in the background for natural ventilation, prevailing winds to go through the house. And this is an abstracted shotgun. This guy inherited, she was one of the first 6 homes. She's standing on this. She's very excited about her home, but she's more excited about her $28 utility bill. $28 utility bill for a homeowner that is in a low to middle income situation saves her $242 a month. That's how you build wealth. That's how you front-end load housing development in the low and middle income communities and transform that neighborhood. That picture is our biggest sales agent. When she shows $242 a month savings, she now can invest that in her family and her home and in other mechanisms. But then all of a sudden, this just quit becoming spaceships, and it started becoming neighborhoods. We worked with Tulane Urban Build, and students built this in 1 semester. This is the first floating house permitted in North America. And that neighborhood of single houses started to get a fabric again, a cadence. When the architectural fabric was not there, that's very apparent. But the social fabric has always been there, and it was coming back. And before we knew it, we had blocks of LEED platinum housing and transforming, and now we have the highest concentration of platinum houses and solar panels in the state of Louisiana and across the country. So then we were approached by the Kresge Foundation and said, we would really like to support your efforts in a strategic plan so that you can take this beyond New Orleans. I think subconsciously they had a little effort to bring us to Detroit, but that's another conversation. And so they asked us to look at 2 projects. I'll talk more today about the Bancroft School, but our first project was partnering with Cory Booker, the former mayor of Newark, to develop with local partners 56 units for disabled veterans, community center, and enter the world of low-income housing tax credits. And so we learned more about the leveraged idea of innovation, of layered funding mechanisms, of how can you incorporate city, state, federal incentives and philanthropic community investment to make a project work. And so the Bancroft School was the second project that we did. Abandoned elementary school, 15 years old, boarding it up, 1 block from a transit-oriented development. And we figured out a way to layer historical tax credits, low-income housing tax credits, $1.5 million of philanthropy to create a $15 million project that's debt-free, LEED platinum, 50 units. Our rents are around $250 a month to $600 a month for the 1 to 3 bedroom. It was rooted in community engagement. The vision of that process came to the forefront. These are the different hierarchy of needs that the neighborhood wants. They're not gold-plated handrails. These are about jobs, training, community investment, things of that nature. And this school was transformed in about 11 months. We had over 170 applicants for 50 units, fully leased out in 3 weeks. 75 kilowatts of solar array, so the tenants in the building have approximately an $8 a month utility bill. That then led to another letter of invitation to communities in Native American lands that are suffering housing needs just as much as some of our urban cores, and we partnered with the Peck Indian Reservation in eastern Montana. 400,000 acre, just on the edge of the Bakken Oil Formation in North Dakota. So they're losing their housing to folks in big oil that are now paying $3,000 a month for this trailer. So they have a wait list of 289 families, plus or minus. We have 600 units on the reservation that needs to exist. Families of 10, 11, 12 people are living in 2-bedroom houses because of their need. And we started this process, and what happened here is very special, and I know I'm about to get the hook. So we started this process, and one of the elders started crying when they started doing the prayer, and I said, oh, where is this going to go? I mean, this could be bad or this could be good. And he stood up and he said, I want you to understand that we are a culture of 7 generations. 3 generations before us and the 3 generations after us, and we're the conduit, the 7th, to mend both. And for 3 generations, no one in this community has ever been asked what they want in their home. So they designed it. They designed guiding principles that powered a community by the sun, wind, earth, and river to redefine contemporary Native American architecture and build a carbon-neutral economic development hub of native to native economic development. This did not come from planners. This came from the community members on that meeting. It designed a community, a 300-acre off-the-grid community that's currently under construction that was designed around historical settlement patterns of the Native American Sioux and Assiniboine tribe, and the main partee was cardinal compass points in the solstice lines. That's what they designed. Currently, we have 20 homes under construction designed by Architecture for Humanity, Sustainable Native Communities Collaborative. Method Homes are our local modular partners, and we're currently building these homes. The tribe is then looking at economic development opportunities to then invest in modular manufacturing homes so they can have year-round construction. Our first 3 homes are going to be featured at the Dwell Conference this summer, and we'll have 20 LEED Platinum homes set by August of this year. And they're coming back to a regenerative community plan. But this is a transformative model. This is one that can change the community when you look at the layered mechanisms of funding, more like we know in New Orleans. Make a bowl of gumbo, not a bowl of chicken broth. So when you can layer all these different incentives, bring people to the table, and then identify the equity gap for the vision, not the budget, then you can leverage your philanthropic work very exponentially. And I've seen it firsthand. This gentleman now earns his allowance, cleaning solar panels, checking his net metering, and washing his parents' car with reclaimed stormwater. So I applaud you all for what the vision of Pittsburgh, but I also implore you to make no little plans. So with that, thank you very much. I apologize for going a little bit over.
Thanks. So, I'm going to ask you to talk about one thing which you've already touched in so many ways, but just to reiterate, because your program has been challenged at times on cost and so forth, as you're familiar, because it's like the question, how can you build this architecture, this is extravagant or somehow out of line with the immediate needs of folks? And you've already articulated some of the answers, but I wonder if you could expand on that a little.
Well, so the idea is about innovation and replication. We need to figure out ways to replicate these costs once we figure out the systems. The Bancroft School project was a very different cost per square foot than the first 6 houses that we built in New Orleans. The Bancroft School project was a fully funded LIHTC deal that construction costs were $89 a square foot that included $500,000 of abatement. That could never have happened if we started that at the first step. And so every iteration is building an infrastructure to make sound decisions and pragmatic ones, because sustainability is not just environmentalism. It's about economic sustainability, social sustainability, and environmental sustainability. And frankly, we have had the platform to figure out every time we replicate this process to bring it into more affordability. Our houses were not affordable on the first 20 homes, not at all. Right. But that same house that was $200 a foot when we built it the first time is now $125 a foot. Great. And that is what we're trying to then share globally, is this process and an understanding that innovation can occur, but it shouldn't just occur for innovation's sake. Innovation needs to be directly linked to replication, and that's where you build your affordability in. And depending upon the vision of the community and the equity gap, that's where you creatively figure out not to value engineer something because you're over budget, but to value engineer the system to build to the vision. And if that's rooted in community from the start, your obstacles will be overcome a great deal.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.